Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. It is NFL Week 10. John McKechnie, Mario Puig, breaking it all down with you. Every single game, fantasy angles, betting angles, all that good stuff and more. Stay tuned. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, again brought to you by our friends over at No House Advantage. I'm your host, John McKechnie, joined as always by Mario Puig. Mario, we're into week 10. If you're listening live, apologies for the slight change from our usual podcasting, recording, streaming time. Had to travel this morning, and I'm actually, as you might be able to see, I'm right here in RotoWire headquarters.
Yeah, we already are anticipating a lot of complaints about how there's no leaf blower ambience, and instead this kind of sterile, silent noise is grating on us. But it's just 1 week, so just get over it, I guess.
Yeah, the professional equipment and all that good stuff, it really pales in comparison to the nice sounds provided by the maintenance crew at my apartment building. But we're gonna soldier on. We're gonna press through. It's November. It's getting cold out. We're gonna grit through it. And what game could be grittier, Mario, than the Falcons versus the Panthers kicking us off here for Week 10? What's the initial lean on this one? That the spread has come down, I believe, a little bit over the course of the week, where the Falcons, I think, were 3.5 point favorites. Now checking in as 2.5 point favorites. So your thoughts on this matchup as we get things started in week 10?
Yeah, and I think this morning the over/under, which had gone from 41 to 42.5, went down to 41.5. So it's a half point up, but a little bit lower than where it had been moving. So I mean, it's a weird game, of course. A lot of weird things about this matchup, and especially on the Carolina side, they got clobbered by the Bengals, of course, on Sunday, and I don't know what. Like I certainly didn't foresee how badly that got, and I thought there was some things that I thought the Panthers could have done on defense that they just didn't, and they particularly fell apart as a run defense against Joe Mixon. So if you're falling apart as a run defense, you generally probably don't want to see on a short week. The Falcons come up next because they're going to make your guys play a lot of run defense reps, a lot more disciplined gap kind of defense, run defense that you can only play by clobbering other huge guys who are trying to hurt you like 30, 35 times. And that does wear teams out. And it's kind of part of the formula all year for the Falcons. Like they try to sort of soften up the defense with Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley and hope to spring a few big plays out of it. And it seems to be working. I mean, they just seem like an unpleasant offense to play against, even though they're not particularly good, especially as a passing offense, of course. So if the Panthers play like they did against the Bengals, then the Falcons should be able to take care of business here. But of course, last time they only got the win because of the dubious, very very hall monitor like penalty on DJ Moore, and then the missed extra point by the Carolina kicker too. So it was like the Falcons should have lost that game. I don't know whether you look at that as like, oh well, now they're gonna pay. Now their luck is going to run out and they're going to lose this one. I think the lucky part, the regressing part from the first matchup is that the Panthers were in it much at all, especially like PJ Walker. PJ Walker will reliably trend toward like 57% of his passes completed for like 6.5 yards per pass. And if you're doing that, you will just kind of lose the vast majority of the games. And he had particularly that big play to Moore kind of juicing his numbers last time. And it's like, if that play doesn't happen, it's just like they never moved the ball the whole game. So I don't know. Foreman on the other, like Foreman, I think can be, of course, like last time he lit up the Falcons defense, put 3 touchdowns on them, and he can do that again. I just I think the Atlanta run offense should also be pretty good. And like Kyle Pitts hurt the Panthers last time, he might do it again this time because if you're putting, I guess it's a question of like what they do with J.C. Horn. But if they put J.C. Horn on Drake London, they're asking for Kyle Pitts to beat them. And if they try to do something with J.C. Horn on Pitts, which they could do, didn't South Carolina actually try to do that at Florida? Like I feel like we saw that matchup before or something. But anyway, if they put
Huh.
J.C. Horn on Pitts, and if Horn wins that rep, they're kind of encouraging London to beat them then. So there should be something that the Falcons have most of the game. And if Algier, not to skip Cordarrelle being back is great, but it's just to say the Algier Huntley combo is just really tough to deal with, and you have to score on offense to take them away from Atlanta. But the Panthers, I don't know if they're going to be able to score in this game unless they bench PJ Walker for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, it's a mess as far as the Carolina side of this goes. I tend to agree with you where, if anything, the Panthers were lucky to have made that game as close as they did. I think, the kind of big viral thing that came from that game was that PJ Walker's pass was the longest pass in terms of distance that was completed, I believe, at least for this entire season. It was like 60 yards in the air, something crazy like that. Just an absolute prayer. Obviously, you can't build an offense around that. That was a kind of a last second desperation type of dealio, hence DJ Moore's helmet throw in the first place. So I think the Falcons are the better side. They played a game last week that truly only the Falcons and the Chargers could have played. Like no other matchup of teams could have produced the goofiness that was Falcons Chargers. But I think the Falcons get back on the right track here, and I think that they not only win, but they cover. As far as the over under is concerned, this could be a good spot for Atlanta's offense. Like you said, it's not super high passing volume, anything like that. But I think Carolina could make some mistakes that end up costing them on the scoreboard. And, we start to see the Falcons score into the mid-20s, and then, the Panthers can just kind of find a way to get to 14, 17 points, something like that.
Yeah, excuse me. The Atlanta defense does need to be careful. I think, especially with Foreman, because if you can contain Foreman, don't let Foreman do what he did last time. Then you, at that point, have the cushion to withstand the big play to DJ Moore, and they might need that cushion because they don't have AJ Terrell again, so they're down to their third corner onward. So they have to like show up. But as long as they do, I think they should be able to, even if it comes down to like a field goal, I think they'll win it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're in line with that game. Got a question from our user Jackson, or fellow watcher. Would you start Jerry Judy or Darnell Mooney this week?
Probably Judy, but let me take another look real quick. So who the Bears got in here again?
The Bears have the Lions, and the Bears are at home.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I would still go with Judy, just because I don't know. I just think he's better, basically.
Yeah, I do as well. I know that the Lions matchup and last week's offensive outburst for Chicago can make that tempting uh, in a way that it wasn't like a month ago. But at the same time, I still probably lean Judy in that setup as well. All right, let's go on over to Germany, Mario, the inaugural, I believe, German game in Germany between the
Yeah.
Buccaneers and the Seahawks. I was talking to uh, Jeff and Waylon on the XM show earlier this week. We were talking about it, and they were confused as to why the Buccaneers were favored in this one. And I just kind of thought that it played directly into Tom Brady's hands, where he can go to Germany, get some sort of, I don't know, crazy
Stem
transfusion,
cell.
and be superhuman.
Yeah, you can get some kind of like stem cell smelling salts or something to get like a was it berserker kind of effect for 30 minutes at a time.
Hmm.
So that kind
Stem
of
smells.
booster, yeah, that kind of booster can really make a difference, and they might need to use some of their uh, bagged items to offset, the travel disorientation.
So that's why I thought that the Buccaneers were favored, because everything else the performance this year would certainly lead you to believe that on a neutral field, the Seahawks are the better team.
Yeah, Tom Brady knows all the right guys to approach on the street and get a bag put over your head and into a van and driven to a remote place where they sell you uh, stimulants. And they, I think, kind of need it because the Seahawks, I mean, the Tampa defense I know has been hurt a lot. And the healthier they get, like if Winfield can come back this week, that would be a big deal, certainly, especially for the middle of the field, the down the seam defense in the slot. But the Seahawks offense just seems pretty well balanced right now, and they're not going to necessarily run easily with Walker, but well, he can make a big play even if it's a tough defense. Like even if he goes, 35 yards on 20 carries, that 60-yarder could be the 21st. And because Geno Smith and with those two receivers especially are doing well, producing reliably, playing off the run, and vice versa, their balance I think just gives them a lot to work with, even in difficult matchups. It's like they can usually do something because they're not like as one dimensional to the point that you can just like neutralize them by removing one part of their game. So I think I don't know. The travel is weird. I don't know what to make of that at all. But I feel like the Seahawks have just kind of like enough ammo on offense that the Buccaneers need to play actually well. And if they only have like another 17 points or whatever, all these ridiculous box scores they've had lately, that probably won't be enough.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks can get this done. Obviously, they have further to travel in this one, but they both are going to be a bit travel weary, and the Bucks winning last week, it's just a temporary band-aid. Like they were playing a Rams team. We previewed that game last week, and I think both of us were siding with the Bucks going in, but it was more a statement on how sorry things are for the Rams than any sort of like this is where touchdown Tom turns him around.
Right.
So I I think I like the Seahawks in this particular setup as well. I feel like something is just off with this Buccaneers team, and I don't think a transnational flight is going to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if they don't have those things we were talking about, then they might have an issue because the Seahawks just kind of seem pretty well put together right now. So, Gino is kind of uh, owed, the grace of maybe having one bad game and being forgiven of it because he hasn't really had one that I can remember. Uh, so that's kind of got to happen eventually with most types of players, but there's nothing on paper about the matchup that seems like it can't be managed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, if and when Gino does have a bad game, he's played well enough this year to where, yeah, he should get a little bit of some cushion for that. We do have a question here. If Miko Hardman is out, does Kadarius Toney become a flex option for you? And the other options would be Curtis Samuel or AJ Dillon.
Okay, so that is pretty tough. Let me see. I got to look up how many snaps those Chiefs receivers played last week. 7 snaps. So it's really tough to tell, even if Hardman doesn't play, it might just mean more snaps for Justin Watson. Basically, it's not a lock that they get Tony going, and the routes that they run with him are probably going to have to be rather primitive anyway. Like even in the longer haul, and right now when he doesn't know the playbook, they can only really put him out there for like run plays and plays that are kind of like dialed up to him, like screens that if they run it, you know, 3 times in a game, the third time it's going to get picked off. So I am not super drawn toward Tony, although I get it. And if he plays a lot of snaps, then it would probably work. It's that part that I have no idea about. So I'd probably go Samuel, maybe Dylan, but I feel like Samuel, especially if it's PPR. If it's not PPR, maybe in that case, let's say Dylan. But in PPR, it's like Samuel gets like 8 to 10 just really low depth of targets every week, pretty much, and it's easy to catch 6 passes if you're getting 10 targets at like 5 yards average depth of target.
No, definitely, and that's a game where Washington should be trailing for a good bit of it. So you can imagine the pass game being a little bit more involved there. Whereas AJ Dillon, it's hard to know what to make of him
Yeah,
right
Packers are a
now.
mess too. So it's like
Boy, are they!
Washington is bad, yes, but it's like Packers are kind of in that category right now somehow.
Yeah, and Washington beat him straight up. For the
Right.
record.
Yeah.
So
Oh
um,
man.
we'll, we'll grab a couple more questions, but first, a message from our friends over at Blue Wire. All right. Randy wants to know with the Renfro and Waller news, is Mac Hollins a flex viable guy over Adam Thielen?
Oh boy. I'm not really drawn toward it, but it is close. Let me look at Thielen one last second here.
Because for the record, Waller is apparently going to injured reserve,
Yeah.
and
So this week, I would say probably Hollins, just because uh, going to Buffalo is about as difficult as it could be for Thielen. But Thielen, starting in like I don't know, I guess pretty much all of the fantasy playoffs, other than at Green Bay in 17, it's like Thielen's got a pretty nice 3 week stretch from 14 to 16. Hollins this week though, yeah, it's just not that the Colts are an obviously great matchup for him or anything, but he might be getting he should get at least 4 targets and as many as like 8 or 10, as long as Renfro and Waller are out.
right. So I think that seems like that will be the case, and Devonte Adams obviously is the first option, but Hollins has done well when given the opportunity so far this season. So I could definitely see the case for him in this setup. Let's keep going here. Let's get on over to our next game, which is the Bills going up against the Vikings. So obviously, this line has been in limbo over the course of the week with the Josh Allen news, him dealing with the UCL injury, like some sort of dang baseball pitcher. And that this line was 9.5 on November 1st, now down to -3.5 in favor of the Bills, and it could still move here.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. Not not knowing what exactly is going on with Allen. It's not much. There's not much more to really break it down over other than that. And I don't know. Has there been any sort of like Jay Glazer kind of report about just what it is going on? Because all I see is kind of the we think he's fine and gonna play comment, and then not practicing yesterday or Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. So no practice today. Um, if you're the Bills, you got to protect the investment. Like if he's anything less than like 80%, I think you just got to hold him out for this week. I know like it's the Vikings. You want to beat a good team and
They
everything,
should
but
send him to Germany to steal Tom Brady's stuff and use it on his elbow.
see, now we're thinking. But unfortunately, it doesn't appear like that's going to be the case. So with that, could be Case Keenum behind center.
Yeah, that should be fine. Like especially for one game, but it will require an entire redesign of the offense because a lot of those opposite corner, spread formation kind of plays where they just have like one guy running all the way on the left and another all the way down the field on the right. Like defense doesn't need to cover those, at least not the way they would cover it with Allen. If Case Keenum's in there, it's like, guys, we got like another 2.5 seconds to get to the spot. Like we'll keep an eye on it, but it's not a big deal if he goes deep. Whereas with Allen, it was like if you like let the guy get behind you and have to turn around to see where he is, it's like that's how quickly the ball will get there, even if you're like 50 yards downfield. So that whole thing off the table would mean a lot. Obviously, the pass rush, the coverage would probably get better too because they would no longer the defense would no longer be using a robber in the middle of the field. They would just have probably like a third safety deep or something like that, or at least another proper linebacker or rusher or something, not someone whose job it is to just make sure Allen doesn't run. It's like Keenum can't run there, so they'd have to lean on the running backs a lot more, and don't think they have the personnel to really lean on their running backs, especially not for high collision type work. So it gets a bit harrowing for them. I just think that they would win this game anyway because um, their defense is ready to carry them pretty much, like especially this game, but even like the rest of the year, like if Allen's not quite right, the defense getting Tre'Davious White back, they have a lot of depth on the front four. There's just a lot of ways that they can always like harass quarterbacks and without needing to blitz to do it. So they should keep them in good. They should keep the Bills' offense in good scoring field position, scoring range ideally, and keep them in the position where they can lean on the run if they want to.
Okay, all right. I can certainly see that. So yeah, the Bills defense obviously gonna have to bow up here, and then you alluded to the kind of changing of the shape of this Buffalo offense without Josh Allen. Does that like boost some of the shorter area pass catchers? Like, is this a week where Dawson Knox could kind of re-enter the fantasy fray, or new pass catching weapons out of the backfield like a Naeem Hines?
Yeah, I mean Hines would be a little interesting just because Keenum is not going to throw as many times in general as Allen, but also on the pass attempts that he does throw, a lower share of those will be going even 15 yards or more downfield, let alone, the 25, 40 yards that they pretty regularly do with Allen out there. So if he's decreasing the depth of the target, then the targets are probably going to different players, and they to this point haven't really featured a volume pass catcher. Like there was Singletary back in like week 3 or something had a weirdly high target count in one of those early games. But other than that game, they haven't really had pass catching volume for their running backs. So they could get that involved at the expense of the downfield threat. But I don't know. I question whether Naheem Hines would have ever been valued by anyone in the league if it weren't for PPR scoring and fantasy. Like I think everybody's gotten so PPR brained, they stop noticing things like whether the ball actually moves. And with Hines, it rarely does. So I can imagine them going to him, but I think the more they use him, the more the defense is able to put resources aside to defend him. The worse the returns will get, and they basically can't rely on him.
Yeah, so I don't think that he's necessarily the answer for a Josh Allenless Bills offense. Anything else to touch on from this game before we move on to the next?
I guess I should have said Case Keenum. I mean, he doesn't have the arm, he doesn't have the velocity to throw deep, but he has kind of the mind for it. Like he's good at spotting opportunities, and his accuracy is usually pretty good. At Houston, obviously, he ran like an empty backfield kind of offense all the time, so he's comfortable with the spread and all that. It's just like the parts of the field that he can credibly threaten are much more limited. But I think Diggs can play underneath. Gabe Davis, they use downfield, but I think that's kind of like a by default thing. He can play underneath. He made plenty of plays underneath at UCF. McKenzie can only play underneath, and Shakir, I think, is already pretty well proven at it too. So their skill sets should be fine. It's just, they're going to have to be prepared to adjust a little bit because it's like defenses are going to start playing them differently, and things that they expect to happen won't quite happen on the same schedule as before.
So I guess this could be kind of a good indicator as far as Ken Dorsey is concerned. What he's able to do without what is almost effectively a cheat code.
Yeah, the degree of difficulty definitely goes up. Like it could be worse. Case Keenum at least isn't a bum or anything, and he's not like scared of situations like these. But if Dorsey gets them over 28 points in this game, that would be pretty impressive.
No, absolutely. So, yeah, this game, there's a bunch of very strange matchups this weekend for injuries or personnel reasons or others. But yeah, this one definitely stands out a lot. Very interested to
And I
see.
think,
Uh,
sorry, I just want to mention quickly. I think the Vikings offense is still fake. I don't think they move the ball much at all in this game.
yeah, and I think also I think the Bills know defensively they need to do their part in order to keep up in this game. So I think that they're going to play extremely well in this one. Let's see here. We got a trade question. Which side do you prefer? Ramondre Stevenson and Rondale Moore, or Amon Ra and Leonard Fournette?
Huh. Let's see, that's pretty tough.
The Amon Ra Fournette side of that thought that they had already won their league after like 2 weeks.
Yeah, probably. I think people are still a little quick to count out Damian Harris, and so I think it would be a little quick to assume Stevenson's recent usage stays at the level his investors might have become accustomed to. And I don't really buy the Rashad White taking over the backfield thing with Tampa Bay. Like, I think White's a good player and they could use him, but even in theory all along with White, it wasn't like you use him to displace Fournette. It's like you do things that because he can't do everything Fournette can, and a few things that Fournette can't, like especially as like a running routes from the slot or running routes downfield in general. Like that's something to me that more overlaps with the receiver personnel or maybe the tight ends. So I think Fournette actually is going to have a big 2 games in the next 3 weeks here. And I could imagine him doing pretty well down the stretch. I don't know what to make of the Lions exactly. Uh, Obviously, anytime they're on the road, Goff is liable to completely fall apart. So
Yep.
I don't expect Amon Ra to do what he did last year, but I don't know. I think most people are probably assuming that Stevenson is going to get more work than Fournette, and I'm not as quick to believe that. So I don't know. I see nothing wrong with either side. I can't really pick one, but I might kind of prefer the Amon Ra Fournette one, just because Fournette has a couple really good matchups coming up. The Seattle one is good, and I can't remember. There's another one like Cleveland. I want to say if he doesn't have a big game against Cleveland, I'll just like I'm not gonna say I'll eat a shoe or anything, but I'll say sorry.
Yeah, I'll be properly surprised. Yeah. So okay, all right. We'll stick with the Fournette Amon Ra side of that as the one that's preferable for fantasy. All right, onward. Let's go Lions, who we were just talking about, going to Chicago to face the Chicago Bears, who I mean, they in season. I don't know if I've seen a team change its narrative, and that they've lost like two of the last 3 games, but they've just looked so much better than they did in September and most of October, to where it almost feels like they've been wins.
Well, getting Fields going the way he has is such a profound contrast to the way their season started. So, at once it's kind of like it's a little frustrating that they didn't set up Fields better earlier in the year. Like nothing they did to start the year ever made any sense. It wasn't like one of those things like there's no way to know. We'll have to guess and check as we go along. And whoops, that didn't work. That's not what happened. It was just kind of like step one before they did anything. It was like, wait, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? And then they're like Byron Pringle offense. Like, wait, no, no. And they not that I'm saying the Claypool trade is what had obviously that just was last week and it hasn't even really changed a whole lot yet. It was more that getting Fields going as a runner and leveraging that threat made him better at everything. It's like you could have predicted that anytime. It's like that's some of the most obvious stuff. If you've ever played defense in Pop Warner, you should be able to understand how that works. It's just if you think a guy is going to run, you stop looking quite so closely at the guy you're covering sometimes because you're like, oh, is he running? Oh, no, he's not. Like this time they were like, oh, he's not a running threat. Let's cover these guys. And it's like, wait, what? Why is the crowd cheering? Why nothing's happened? I'm just covering this guy. Why is the crowd cheering? It's like, well, he's 30 yards downfield now this time. It's like, oh, okay, well, now I'm gonna have to the next time I get to the line of scrimmage, I'm gonna have to get out of my back pedal, turn my hips, and then double check to make sure he's not running this time before I turn my back to him. And that will make you that's how you get Fields to get the defender to look in the backfield a split second too long and get the big play downfield as a passer. So it's like every threat you establish you can play off of as an offense. And to start the year, the Bears were kind of just like, all right, we're gonna run it on first and second. We're only going to throw it 20 times a game, and every single time we will do our best to make sure it's in third and long. And like that's like, yeah, well, what do you expect? Of course, no one can produce in that kind of offense. So they finally are using Fields in accordance with his skill set. It's making every part of the game easier for him. And don't get me wrong, he's not going to be. I don't think anyway. He's going to keep putting up like these 100-yard rushing games. Like eventually, defenses really are going to sell out just to stop him as a runner. I
Yeah.
just think that when that point comes, as long as they don't try to throw too many times and subject him to that pass blocking, that the lack of it too many times, I think he can make those throws because it's less coverage resources than he faced the first 4 weeks of the year when he was throwing the ball 20 times a game.
Right, exactly. They just had it all wrong to start the season and for a lot of last year, and things have looked unbelievable. So I mean, gosh, what a great chalk play in DFS last week was Fields. So um, from that, do you take anything from like the Cole Kmet performance? Is he back in the radar, or is he still someone that that's likely a fluke? And
He's who
how do
we
we apply all of that? Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
yeah, I
obviously.
think I don't know. It's like Komet really suffered for that poorly run offense to start the year. Like even if he's not particularly good, like there was no way he was that bad. And so I didn't really try to evaluate him for it. But yeah, when Fields is producing like he has lately, then the expectation changes to, well, Komet's got to show something then, and he has. So Cole Komet, Chase Claypool, Mooney, those are three, in my opinion, good enough threats, especially if they're establishing Fields as a runner and if the defense is playing him honestly as a runner. Then Fields is accurate and he can throw the ball pretty far. His whole issue is always like trying to read the field when there's a lot of defenders cluttered, and he's waiting for things to become more obvious before he pulls the trigger. Like an extra safety way up in the box will make everything a little more clear when he's trying to look downfield.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So, are the Lions a team that can, kind of mix things up for him,
No,
or
their defense
no?
sucks. But uh,
So last week was more about the Packers than the Lions. I take it.
a little bit of that, and I think that just Fields uh, is at least against a Lions type defense, you don't worry about him. Like I know there's some level of volatility, and like he can probably, I don't know, get sacked 4 times in this game or something. But like the Lions are a properly bad, maybe the worst defense. So I think if you're unless you have a really good quarterback, like one of the top 5 guys, I think you're starting Fields if you have him this week. Even knowing it's like a little bit of a roller coaster, it's like he can get you 40 points in a matchup like this.
No, he absolutely could. One final thought here before we move on. Your thoughts on the total here, because I don't think anyone would have expected that the Bears would be playing in a game where the total in Chicago, no less, is 48.5 points. Do you think there's a little bit too much credence or credit maybe being put to the Lions for that one? Because the spread is pretty narrow. And I'm not sure that this Lions offense is anything close to resembling what we saw earlier on in the season when they were, scoring in bunches to begin the year.
Yeah, I think the Lions offense is in a really bad spot. Like Jared Goff leaving a dome and then going either lower temperatures or more wind. That's just the more either one of those gets, the worse it gets for Goff and thus the whole offense. So I actually think playing in pretty cold weather in Chicago is about as it's like going to Washington, going to Foxborough, stuff like that is about the worst spot for Goff. So he could really kill them in this game. I kind of like the under for that reason, and the Bears to cover, and I think the Bears will move the ball well and put up points. But you can imagine them throwing the ball only 20 times in this game, but because they're just controlling the game the whole time.
Yeah, I do like both of those sides for this matchup as well. Let's grab one more question here before we get on to our next discussion. Let's see here. Pick two of these: Adam Thielen, Drake London, DJ Moore, or Mac Hollins.
I would pick DJ Moore and Hollins, I think.
All right, good enough for me. All right, before we move on over to our next game, got a message from our friends over at No House Advantage. No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play in pick'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning big cash prizes. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot at hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20x your entry if you hit all your picks. Bet on up to 5 player prop over-unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now with promo code NHAWIRE, that's NHAWIRE, at nohouseadvantage.com, or download the app on the app stores to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience the daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You don't want to miss out on this. Also got a message from our friends over at NFL All Day. NFL All Day is officially licensed collectible of the NFL. It's a whole new way to express your fandom by owning the greatest moments from your favorite players and teams. Each moment on NFL All Day features a limited edition video highlight of one of the greatest plays from the NFL's past or present. From OBJ's iconic one-handed catch to Patrick Mahomes' 5 touchdowns on 5 straight possessions to Brian Urlacher's 85-yard pick six against the Packers, there's truly a moment on NFL All Day for every fan. And it doesn't stop at being able to own a collection of your favorite moments, because NFL All Day rewards collectors for their fandom. You see, NFL All Day collectors have earned once in a lifetime experiences, like literally going on stage at the draft to announce draft picks and meeting some of the biggest names from the 2022 NFL draft at the NFLPA Rookie Premiere. What's the best way to get started? Head to NFL All Day to sign up and redeem a free limited edition NFL collectible featuring Patrick Mahomes. Don't miss out on NFL All Day's next gen fan platform and start unlocking rewards and experiences today. All right, coming up next, we got Jags Chiefs. Chiefs just were able to narrowly escape the Sunday nighter against the Titans, whereas the Jags, well, they played the Raiders, so they were able to get that one done. The second you go down by 17 against the Raiders, you're going to win. That seems to be the recurring theme from this season. Jags 9.5-point dogs on the road. I think that there could be some optimism about the Jags. I thought Trevor Lawrence looked good, especially in the second half last week, and the Chiefs obviously looked a little bit stuck in the mud, but I feel like the Titans are kind of a uniquely tough team for the Chiefs, and historically that has been the case. They always play them close for the most part. I think the Chiefs roll in this
Oh
spot.
yeah,
I think that the
Chiefs
Jaguars
by
are in deep trouble.
28 or something.
I mean, it could get that ugly. I think that this is just a really brutal spot for Jacksonville, and I think that the Chiefs, they're not going to stay out of rhythm twice, and I don't think that the Jaguars have the personnel to even get them there.
Right. Like I'll put it this way: even Jerick McKinnon might be able to move the ball in this
Wow,
game for the
statement.
Chiefs offense. But it actually is a really good spot for them to get Pacheco going if they're again, they should just give Edwards-Helaire all of the snaps that they waste on McKinnon, and then just kind of uh, make Pacheco do the real carries, the real running back stuff. But yeah, the Jags defense, I think, will just get completely overwhelmed like right off the bat in this one, and I don't think their offense is going to do anything.
No, are they overutilizing Travis Etienne at this point?
Yeah,
Like
they got to
they're getting it
stop
wrong
doing it.
earlier this year.
The decision is going to be made for them if they keep using him like this, and it's it's really irritating because it's like it should be obvious. It is obvious. It should be obvious to Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson should step up and push back against if Balky's like we got to get our first round return out of him. It's like you can give him the work he can handle. That's what you can do. And if you give him more than that, he's going to get hurt. Because the way ETN is good and the way ETN plays right now without getting hurt is by being very particularly as fast as he is and being able to move the way that he does. If he's out there getting upwards of 8 carries a game when he's starting to get lead legs, then that's how you get a guy taking a shot that he usually doesn't get hit with. It's stuff like that he's at risk for when you start putting him out there more than he's built for. So I mean, ETN's awesome. If they were giving him 12 carries and 5 catches, I think it would be working out just perfect, and I think they'd be getting more or less the same results. But because they have terrible personnel, because of Trent Baalke, and because Doug Peterson's kind of just not really thinking, like he's going into games, he's kind of mashing buttons, seeing what works and what doesn't, and then he tries to hit the buttons that worked a little bit next week. That's his approach right now, and it's like you gotta start guessing right ahead of time. You know, you gotta go in being pretty sure this button's the right one before you press it, and he's just not thinking anything through right now.
No, he definitely doesn't seem to be. And then on the Chiefs side, spin the wheel as far as the pass catchers go. Like, who do you think this sets up well for, especially considering that Mecole Hardman's a bit dinged up?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know for sure how much man coverage the Jaguars run, and I don't know if they're going to try to put Tyson Campbell and Juju Smith-Schuster when he's lined up out wide. But pretty much any Jags corner who isn't Tyson Campbell can be beat pretty. I won't say easily. Like Darius Williams isn't bad, but he's just one slot rep, and you often get 2 slot reps on upwards of like half your snaps against the Chiefs. So there's always going to be some depth tested in the Jaguars corner rotation that they are not suited to handle. And what's happened a bunch of times this year, including against the Broncos, was they ran a lot of zone coverages, and sometimes these guys just don't know what they're doing in their zones. And they hand things off wrong, like that long Dulcich play on the right side was Rayshon Jenkins just cutting him loose, and there's just no one there for 20 yards. So they're liable to do stuff like that in this game too, because they have to call zone coverages because they don't have the personnel to play man coverage, especially not against the 4 wide kind of looks, the trips looks that the Chiefs are going to give them. So I think everything falls apart immediately for the Jaguars defense, like passing game. Uh, it's going to be one of those kind of games, I think, where Mahomes throws it only like 29 times, but gets like 330 yards and 3 touchdowns out of it.
Yeah, the hyper efficient type of outing. So yeah, I don't think that the Jags stand much of a chance in this one. I like the Chiefs to cover it as well. Onward, we got Browns, Dolphins. Dolphins 3.5 point favorites in this one. Over under checks in 49.5 points in this one against the Browns. Browns coming off the bye. Of course, last time we saw them, they looked impressive in their blowout win over the Cincinnati Bengals on that Monday Night Football game. Dolphins played a very exciting game, of course, last week in Chicago. So I don't know. The first thing that strikes me is just like I don't see how Cleveland kind of contributes quite enough to the total being where it is right now, unless truly Miami just cannot stop the run whatsoever.
Yeah, the Miami offense seems like a given, especially since it's supposed to be like 80 degrees there, and this part of the year when you can find those 80-degree games with no wind, that's really good for a passing game. It's like everybody else is playing in not those conditions, so it should be like it's difficult to imagine how Tua could do badly here unless Miles Garrett single-handedly just goes completely crazy, which it can happen. He'll probably do that a few times in his career, but that's talking long shot for this one. Um, yeah, I guess it would have to be just Chubb going nuts, and that's a little more likely yet. I think. So he does that a few times a year, and if it's like if it's your day as the defense, it's like there's not much you can do about it. So the Dolphins have defended the run well. I I don't know. I'm not convinced they've been really that well tested by it. It's Chubb is the kind of running back who, once you face him, you go from like fifth to 12th in the rankings for run
Hmm.
defense. So it's stuff like that, and it could happen, especially if Brissett can keep it together and keep Cooper established enough as a threat to keep the defense from being able to sell out against Chubb. Like they could keep it, competitive, but it's like if they miss on just one of their drives, I don't know how they catch back up, because whereas Miami can just throw the ball quickly to catch back up, the Browns can only run the ball with Chubb, and if he doesn't go 60 yards, it's going to take almost half the quarter to do it. So yeah, I don't see how the Browns win it, but maybe they keep it competitive enough that the Dolphins are still throwing the ball into the fourth quarter.
Okay. And then from the fantasy angle, as far as this Miami backfield is concerned, what was your takeaway from Jeff Wilson's first game there and the impact that he might have versus, Raheem Mostert?
I think they're both necessary because Mostert's really good from scrimmage on a per snap basis, but he can't really give you, not without breaking down anyway, he can't give you 15 carries or more reliably before the issues start to pop up. He also isn't really, like, he's very reliably effective, but that's only the case while using him in ways that kind of suit his game. Like, he's not the most uh, he doesn't have like a varied skill set as a runner. He's kind of at his best hitting those lanes off tackle really well, and he does that. But if he got like more, I don't know, between the tackles kind of stuff, that's where Wilson's more useful, because he's not as explosive from scrimmage as Mostert is. It's almost like Wilson needs to take more of the hits that there are to dole out, because he can't justify himself by matching Mostert's big play ability or Mostert's ability to average a particular yards per carry over an extended sample. So I think Wilson's there to pick up the plays that are basically beneath Mostert, which Mostert they would ideally reserve for basically if they have to score quickly. Like, however urgent the situation is, it's the better it is that they can turn to Mostert in that situation without overworking him to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that the Wilson trade was a shrewd, kind of under the radar move for the Dolphins because, yeah, Mostert kind of unfortunately feels like this ticking time bomb and your ability to take snaps, carries, hits off of his plate in the form of Wilson. I think the more of that, the better. So you're preserving that big play ability from Mostert. So interested to see how it plays out going forward against the Browns defense. I feel like it should go reasonably well. Let's go ahead. Let's hit a couple more questions here before we move on to our next game. Truly epic wants to know which one of these guys you're benching. Devin Singletary, James Conner, or Deontay Foreman. This is a PPR format.
Oh man, God, that Connor one is tough, especially with Stafford. His situation being what it is. Like, I know Connor hasn't gotten it going yet this year, but he's good in my opinion. And the Rams, especially if they don't have Stafford, it's just kind of like they might be so bad on offense that the Rams defense starts playing badly, if only because they're kind of gassed. So uh, I I would probably bench Foreman, even though I don't want to. Like, I just think Singletary's got a really good matchup in my opinion, where he could go over 20 carries, and I think he's also their best passing down back, even though that's kind of crazy. And with Connor, it's like we've already seen how that offense can sort of just like stall out in the red zone. Like, they get to the red zone and then stall out to the situation where they can only give the ball to Connor. And if the Rams get gassed because of no Stafford and just being generally really awful, I think this could be a spot for Connor to kind of finally get going.
Okay. This one really, really close in the RotoWire rankings. They're all ranked within 7 spots of each other. We do have Foreman the highest at 20. So this is low end RB2
Is
range. Connor
Hubbard
at
out?
20.
Have they declared that? Because Hubbard might be back after not playing the last 2 weeks.
Okay, that is a good point. He's still listed as questionable, but has been practicing fully.
Yeah, so I think Foreman is clearly way better than Hubbard, but it's just one of those things that I'm bringing up because sometimes teams just shoot themselves in the foot by giving 10 carries to the lesser player because they're back from injury, you know?
And who's a team that we think could do that? The Panthers.
I would have been more certain of it if Rule were still the coach, but it's even Wilkes might stumble into that one.
Yeah, I think so as well. Another one from that game, Chicken Nugget. I like the Aaron Rodgers AVI there. Cordell Patterson, Brandon Ayuk, or Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is a flex question.
Okay. This might sound weird, but I think I'd go with Ayuk. Um, or I get that doesn't probably sound that weird. It probably makes sense enough on its own. But I just don't like Patterson as much as I normally would because of the short week and returning from the knee injury that kept him out for a whole month. And yeah, I just think uh, Shanahan's probably going to put Staley in a spin cycle.
Yeah, well said. Happened before, can certainly happen again. So I like the Ayuk call there, and good like caution as far as Patterson and his potential usage for this evening. Let's keep going here. We got the Texans and the Giants. So this one has moved a good bit. Is there an injury front or injury issue here with the Giants? Because this was 6.5 on Tuesday.
Um, Sorry, what is it at now?
It is. I'm looking at 4 over on DraftKings.
Okay, so I don't know what it means when when something like this is going on, but on covers they're showing 5.5. So I don't know if it's like uh I don't know, just some particularly large bet was placed on whatever the Giants maybe on DraftKings, but hasn't in a way that hasn't shown up other places. I don't know, but uh, as far as the line trending more that way, I got nothing. I don't just Damian Pierce highlights from last week. I really have no
Those are
idea.
cool.
They're cool actually, and it could be a problem for the Giants. It's just they have Saquon, and I don't know. Their defense is better. They have a couple other. They have Brian Dable. I don't know.
Coming
I
off the bye.
maybe the people who are betting against the Giants just are following kind of like a perhaps well-founded rule of like don't pick Daniel Jones to cover, you know, more than a field goal and a half or whatever.
So
Because I mean, it's like what it's probably a pretty good rule. It probably hasn't gone terribly wrong. I don't know. I haven't looked, but I'd imagine it's like if you're expecting an overachieving offense to play like a truly good offense, like maybe that's how you can fall into a trap where it's otherwise seemingly safe. It's like really bad defense. It's like, yeah, but kind of bad offense. We just forgot because they have a bunch of cool tricks now.
Mhm. So yeah, this one hard to know what to make heads or tails of it. Do we feel like the Texans might be getting some help back as far as the passing game is concerned? So maybe there won't be quite as much of a need for Davis Mills to be throwing it to the likes of, oh, I don't know, Chris Moore.
Hey, I have the weirdest Chris Moore opinion in the world, which is that I think he's good, but playing in the wrong position where he is admittedly bad in the slot. But yeah, if Cooks can return, I don't know if Collins might be back. Nico Collins might be back. So yeah, it could be. I guess what you might see this game like is just two teams that can run on each other, but two teams that can't really throw on the other. I feel like the Houston corners just match up pretty well with the personnel and offense. It's Saquon that the Texans have no answer for, but the Giants might not have much of an answer for Pierce themselves. So
Right.
it it might just kind of be, you know, a like both of the teams move the ball, and maybe the Giants are always in some sort of control. Maybe they're not truly like down for more than a few minutes at a time, but it might be difficult to get that two-score lead if the other team is moving the ball and specifically on the ground so much.
Well said. Well said. So, for me, like my point of view for the Texans this year has been to bet them when they are big favorite, or I'm sorry, big underdogs, and then stay away basically otherwise. But the Giants are so tricky. They've been great against the spread, of course, but we started to see them kind of come back down to earth before the bye with that game in Seattle. So I'm still like unsure that there's still some regression yet when it comes to this Giants team, and I don't know if the Texans are the ones that make it happen or not. But as it stands at 5.5, I'm still tempted, I think, by the Texans.
Yeah, I'm there too. I actually another stupid obscure opinion that I have is that the Texans corners are actually good. I just think their run defense is incredibly bad, which is why you don't really notice the pass defense. Is there some guys running for a touchdown on them, but
Yep.
they can, I think, and especially when Stingley really gets going. Like I think he's playing better than people are giving him credit for, but. Uh, Desmond King would have been exactly the kind of corner in college at Iowa, one of the few players in college football who would have been able to give a player like Wandale Robinson a tough time. So it's kind of like all aligning, I think, for the Giants offense to see some of their like least favorite prospective matchups. Like other than Slayton being able to outrun Steven Nelson in terms of raw speed, I just don't know of any matchup they have that's actually in their favor as far as the route runners.
No, and Daniel
Just
Jones,
Saquon, yeah.
still Daniel Jones. So yeah, Saquon. This is going to be a fun game if you like run games, but maybe not a whole lot else entertainment wise coming on in this one. Before we get on over to our next game, we've got a message from our friends over at MKF. Football is officially back on Monkey Knife Fight with all the NFL action you're looking for. And if college football is more your speed, they've got plenty of that too. On Monkey Knife Fight, there's no sharks, no salary caps, and no math. It's just easy to play, easy to win daily fantasy player props. Join now at monkeyknifefight.com and you'll get your first game free. Then use promo code RWNFL to get your first deposit matched instantly up to $100. So, what are you waiting for? Join Monkey Knife Fight today. All right, let's go to I think one of the funkier games of the week, Mario. And again, funky is kind of the word of the week with some of these games. But we got Steelers, Saints, and the Saints are favored on the road.
Oh man, yeah. I barely even would even know why. I mean, I don't even really like the idea of picking them to so much as win the game, let alone like cover whatever the number is. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess the thing to watch is T.J. Watt, and I don't know what wasn't he? Didn't he have like a torn pectoral muscle uh, earlier in this year?
Yeah, I
So
think
he's apparent.
week one, right?
Yeah, he's apparently on the verge of returning from that. And I'm sorry, I can't remember another player. Like, was J.J. Watt the only other player to return in season from a pectoral tear? I know he had the elbow thing, but I'm trying to remember a time this ever happened, and I can't think of it. So they're gonna have to probably have him like taped up in a really weird way. But TJ Watt with one arm immobilized entirely might still be difficult to deal with if you're the Saints. And their offensive line is dealing with some injuries too. I don't know if guys are going to miss games, but what was it? Andrews, Pete, the center, and the right tackle. Like the right tackle is going to play Ramchick, but he's dealing with something. Whereas the other two that I mentioned, I think, haven't practiced as of yesterday. So, yeah, it's throw in the Tomlin factor, throw in the fact that the Saints are kind of just bad. Uh,
Yep, short week. They looked terrible
yeah,
on Monday. They looked awful.
they suck. They have like three good players, and quite importantly, we don't know if Marshawn Lattimore is going to be back for this one. Like he wasn't practicing as of yesterday, so if Lattimore's out and TJ Watt is in, Andy Dalton is the quarterback. I mean, I know Kenny Pickett is on the other side, and that is worse than Dalton, believe it or not. But like Pickett and Tomlin defeats Dalton and anybody.
Yeah, and Dennis Allen at that doesn't seem like he's going to be he's like, I'm
All
not
those
saying he's
jokers are
getting.
just about on the way out.
Yeah, there's I think the firing Monday after the regular season is going to be a busy one. I think that he's certainly potentially on the chopping block. But beyond that, this is obviously the Steelers' first game since trading away Chase Claypool. Your thoughts on what this receiving core and target rotation is going to look like moving forward now that Mapletron is gone?
Yeah, believe it or not, he was probably their fastest player on offense, so that's a little concerning for me. Uh, but I think Steven Sims is actually good. That they just have to run completely different concepts than they did with Claypool. Because whereas Claypool, I think, is a receiver who can line up anywhere, who they incidentally put in the slot because Deontay Johnson can't play outside and or sorry can't play inside, and George Pickens I don't know if he can't play inside, but he's definitely better suited to playing outside.
Yeah.
Whereas Sims is more like an actual slot receiver who would probably run more of the concepts that they did with like Ray McLeod last couple of years. So that's interesting to me, but more so whatever moves away from Claypool's usage, like it could go to either of Pickens or Johnson too, but the most proximity wise, it's Fryermuth who would be closest to those targets, and I happen to think Fryermuth is plenty well qualified for that. Like he should probably like on another team, it wouldn't be surprising if Fryermuth was a 90 catch player or something, maybe even more than that.
Hmm.
So if they have more work for him, I think he would probably do well with it. It's just that I don't know. We see a lot of targets go Deontay Johnson's way. Like he has a lot of those kind of like both the dialed up looks and the kind of like abort route plays.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many situations where the flow chart says throw it at him, and that might just become even more the case without Claypool there. But if it's the next closest player who's getting the usage, most of it anyway, then it's got to be Fryermuth.
Okay. Well, that's music to my ears. I have a lot of Fryermuth across my various leagues. And then there's been a bit of a stink, Mario, when it comes to this Steelers backfield. Is Najee Harris at risk of like actually getting some carries taken off of his plate by Jalen Warren, or is this just like we're bored and we haven't played a football game in 2 weeks coming from Pittsburgh?
Um, I was one of those people who said that Harris was a bit overrated, and like for instance, I was like, you got to take ETN over Najee Harris, be it in dynasty or if you're a real NFL team. So I'm not inclined to be a big defender of Harris or anything, but this Jalen Warren stuff is just ridiculous. I mean, look at the splits of the respective production that occurred in base functions versus like hurry up or draws on like punt carries on 3rd and 17 where they hand it to Warren and he gets 14 yards. Like plays like that are happening, and they're juicing his numbers. While just because Harris goes off the field for that play, he's left with numbers that people who look at box scores or people who just don't know how to watch football will look at the game and be like, "Oh my God, Warren is better than Harris." It's like, no, just imagine Harris running a draw play on 3rd and 17. He'll get 12 yards or whatever. It's fine. He can do that. Uh, Warren was a guy who, like, his absolute best case outcome scenario as a prospect is probably like C.J. Anderson or something like that, and he could be that. I mean, he's got like the short, like borderline overweight build thing going on, and
Like
apparently
tackling a
that's.
fire hydrant.
I mean, there's really something to investigate here. I mean, I don't know what else he actually has going for him, but yeah, it's like he seems to get something out of it. Just if you're like 5'8", 215, 220, guys just start. It's like you're a changeup at all times, but also one that it's just like it hit. It's like way too hard to knock it off course. It doesn't make any sense. Um, but he's again, you just see so many of his plays are happening on draws or carries where it's like second in such a distance that the defense has surrendered the run because they're trying to stop
Yeah.
the big play as a pass. And just, if Harris gets those plays, his numbers look totally different. And I don't know. There's no way in hell Warren is producing at Alabama the way Harris did. And
No.
Warren was not that productive at either of Utah State or Oklahoma State, and he's a below average athlete. So like he knows how to play running back. Like he's got that like switch where he just knows where to run and stuff. But aside from that, he just doesn't have anything.
No, I don't think so either. So it feels a little drummed up, and I just think, we were kind of in lockstep to an extent when it came to Najee being a little bit overrated, or being the RB1 in the class of 21. But he was productive last year despite playing in an ugly offense. Obviously a lot of that had to do with the catches and everything. And I think that contextually, there's just a lot wrong with this Pittsburgh offense, to where it's not Najee as the problem. It's kind of a lot of other things. I mean, their offensive line is
Yeah,
terrible. Obviously, their quarterback play is terrible. Matt Canada is a buffoon. So, I mean, of course, you could be frustrated by the lack of output from Najee so far, especially if you like invested, at the 8th overall pick in your fantasy draft on him. But I highly doubt that this becomes a situation in which he is just in standard downs getting benched for one Jalen Warren.
if they give it a try, Warren's all of a sudden going to look slow and small instead of you know stocky and tough to tackle. Like they're just going to be like,
Uh,
what's this undersized fullback getting the ball for? And
yeah,
yeah, it's honestly it's just ridiculous. And I kind of wish. I mean, granted, it's hard to tell how many people believe this Warren is better than Harris thing. Uh, it might just be like one out of 25 people, and like it's just impossible to not notice them. But if it's a widespread belief, that's just disheartening. That's like a top 10, not top 10. There are many amazing instances in the Hall of Goldfish Brain, but to go in under 2 years from believing a guy is the next Steven Jackson to believing that the Utah State transfer who averaged under 5.0 yards per carry at Oklahoma State and runs like a 4.6. To think that guy is better than Harris, at the very least, I hope you never believed the first thing. Like I hope that all these people who think Warren is better than Harris all along were like irrational haters of Harris or something. Because if someone actually believed that Harris was Steven Jackson 18 months ago or whatever, and now is at this point that they're like put Warren in, you got a bad case of the fish brain, the goldfish brain.
yeah, that's so.
Keep
Uh,
your eye on the ball, folks. Don't just let it hit you in the face.
oh my god. Okay, let's keep rocking. We do have some questions again, thanks to our viewers on the live stream chiming in with great questions every single week. Janthony wants to know: Singletary, Mooney, Khalil Herbert, Josh Palmer, or Jeff Wilson this week? One of these guys, you got to start.
Yeah,
Please
not
help.
to dismiss the others, but I would go with Singletary just because even if Josh Allen is out, and even though the Vikings' run defense has been pretty good, I think Buffalo's defense is going to do a great job, and they're going to have favorable field position. I think that they will want to drag out, to make make the make them hold onto the ball in Minnesota territory just kind of as long as possible, and hope that everything else works itself out, because usually it will, especially if you can count on the defense the way you tend to with Buffalo. So I think they're going to have a need to run, and I think Singletary is the only one who can do it. And I think that running, which could happen more than it has in the offense to this point in the year, will hopefully occur in scoring range, at some notable rate. But yeah, I mean, if Keenan Allen's out again, then Palmer has to be again Herbert's lead wide receiver. So I don't mean to make it sound like it's a clear call to me.
Okay. Yeah, Palmer definitely interesting, pending that Keenan Allen news. And it sounded like it, at least coming out of the bye, that the Chargers were going to be waiting for Keenan Allen to be 100% to be back, as opposed to kind of rushing him back, and that's how he
Well, it was worth a shot,
reactivated it.
John. It was worth a shot.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know what's so hard with these. Anyway.
And then let's see here. Tony Pollard or DJ Moore. Good problem to have, but probably Pollard.
Yeah, probably Pollard.
Yeah.
I don't really have much to add there. Just things can
Okay.
get weird with the Panthers, yeah.
Yep. It's probably Pollard is the answer. We'll get one more right now. We got Jeff Johnson asking us, Judy, Lazard, or Josh Palmer.
That is tough. I think I'd lean Judy, but I get it if I know that the over/under is really gruesome for that game, so I can understand if someone would be drawn toward the other two. And I will say, if Allen is out, the case gets right there quite a bit stronger for Palmer. It's just also if Allen is in, Palmer loses quite a lot too.
Right. Yeah. It gets tricky in a hurry when Keenan Allen is all of a sudden getting 15 targets. So I think that's the right call. With Judy, we have him as wide receiver 21 this week. Let's keep going. Speaking of that game, we do have Broncos Titans. Titans only 2-point favorites in this one against Denver. Titans kind of gave Kansas City all they could ask for this past weekend. Denver obviously coming off the bye. It beat Jacksonville last time out in London. This feels like a borderline disrespectful line to the Titans, but the Titans, they don't. The floor is very high, but the ceiling isn't overly high either. It feels like, given the quarterback and passing game situations.
Yeah, and the Denver defense is legitimately good. So
Yes.
I kind of see it. Also, the Titans have been really heavily work. I know this is always the case, but like Derrick Henry is getting so much work that I don't know. Like it wouldn't be shocking if he just kind of has a sluggish game pretty soon. And one of the better defenses, a defense that has defended everything pretty well without really selling out at any point to do it. Like they should be able to sell out against the run here, and I don't know, maybe Tannehill can make them pay if they do that. But more so seems to me like the Broncos would just get away with it. So I could imagine this being very low scoring game as the over under implies. Uh, on the Denver offense side, I think they're just not going to be able to run the ball. By the way, if they're doing this offense where they try to make everything happen for Greg Dulcich. So to do that, in addition to implementing a whole host of routes and formations that they just straight up would not use before he returned from injury, they also have abandoned a lot of their run blocking standards. Like Eric Tomlinson and Saubert and even Beck barely played last week. And that's because they just said, well, if Dulcich has to go to the bench for us to run, then we're going to pass. And they're going to keep doing this. We'll see how much it works. Like they needed Rayshon Jenkins to botch his coverage the last time out to get Dulcich over like 50 yards. So is that play going to be there? Is he going to make some play that he didn't make last time that he can this time? Or is he just going to regress? Is the running game still going to suck? And will we be basically down to an offense that gets whatever else it might from just three players, especially Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and KJ Hamler to a lesser extent. And I could see some scenario where Sutton, Jeudy, and maybe Hamler, maybe Dulcich or whatever, kind of do enough to win if the Denver defense like intercepts Tannehill and if Derrick Henry is held to under 90 yards on upwards of 27 carries. And those things seem like they could happen, but I think that's like the only way they can win. The reason it's hard for me to tell which way it'll go is because the other side, it's a similar problem, if not worse. I mean, not to assume Russell Wilson will throw well against the Tennessee defense, but they are much more easily thrown on than run on. So there's something to that. Whereas on the other side, it's like the Broncos defense is just kind of good at everything, and the Titans can only run. But I don't know if it's like they have the upper hand there. So I don't know. It seems to me like it's going to be a real slog of a game. I think you might see Russell Wilson. I don't know. I'm probably going to jinx it either way, just get it totally wrong either way. But the Titans, the Titans defense plays just kind of like Vrabel's brain would dictate. Like they have a
The
sort of like
extension.
savage. Yeah, they have kind of like a savage tendency, especially when they're really kind of like feeling good that day. So guys like Roger McCreary, there's like a trend of just kind of like hard nosedness in the front, and it wouldn't be surprising if they kind of come out and just start hitting really hard and get the Broncos to just kind of look flat the whole day while Henry just grinds them down over upwards of 30 carries.
I'll take that option.
That's what I
I
would go
just
with if I had to call it. It's just even that one strikes me as like a 54% kind of thing.
yep. But I think the Broncos have just been so.
They
Uh,
suck. I mean, the defense
yeah,
is
this.
great, but Hackett is such a fool. The offense really sucks. And if they're going to just stop being able to run so that Dulcich doesn't get rocked as a blocker, then they're going to find the passing game get more difficult too. They're going to find these busted coverages that they keep getting down the seam with the tight ends, not Okwegbenham, because we don't call these routes if he's active. Those plays aren't going to be busted coverages if the defense knows that they're never going to be a run play, that they're going to catch on to that bluff eventually. So the Broncos are in a lot of danger, even though their defense makes them more competitive than they have any business being.
Yeah, well said. So yeah, this one, there's a reason why we're seeing a total check in, not just under 40, but we're looking at 36 and a half at some
I wouldn't
places.
want
Like,
the over even then.
yeah, not even then. It's yeah.
I'm thinking
Ugh.
like 17 to 10 kind of thing, 17 to 13 kind of thing.
That I love. Yeah, that would make sense to me. Anything else that's on the higher end, I simply won't believe it. Let's go Indianapolis versus Las Vegas. One team that is actively trying to lose, and that's Indianapolis versus the Raiders, who aren't trying necessarily, but that the results kind of seem to suggest that they are that there's some tankage going on. So that obviously Vegas, they're going up against a team that has Sam Ellinger, has some guy that Jeff Saturday that obviously we remember him from
Got that
as being
OL
paid.
upgrade at long last. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I mean, you fire Frank Reich, you make that decision to have Sam Ellinger be your quarterback the rest of the season. I don't know why. Like no one said you had to do that. You could have said that Ellinger's starting against Washington and just kind of leave it at that. You don't need to like give him all these ridiculous expectations and then not play to his strengths. But rant over on that one. But either way, I mean, this line is down a bit from where it was. I mean, it was 6.5 earlier this week in favor of the Raiders, looking closer to 5 now. Obviously, earlier in the show, we mentioned Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow being banged up, but that's been the case for much of this season. So all of this a preamble to ask, is there a way that this is just weird enough to where Indianapolis is able to go in there and if not win, at least cover and keep this one respectable?
Well, they do have Jonathan Taylor. Who knows how healthy he is? Who knows how much of their playbook they'll be able to run down their only two inline viable tight ends, or at least we'll see about Mo Alley Cox and Jelani Woods. Neither has been practicing as of Thursday. So if those two are out, it's so funny how bad Chris Ballard is at his job. Uh, they can't run the scheme that they can only run, if that makes any sense. Like they got themselves in this position where they need to run a certain number of tight end reps, and they can't now. And not just the certain number, they can't reach that because they only have one of the three players, but the one and third that they have can't run anything that the other two can. So Kylan Granson plays like a ceremonial tight end role. He's not a tight end. He's just some guy who isn't a receiver or a tight end and needs something to do because they spent a draft pick on him. And they've been trying to put Mo Alley Cox to the periphery, have him block to make the Granson pick look good, to make the Woods pick look good. And I think the dysfunction they've gotten instead is a pretty predictable result. Like it's not a good idea. Why would it work? So I think the Colts could just be incredibly bad on offense in this game even with the Raiders defense pretty much crap. Uh, they might have Jonathan Taylor back, but they might have him getting hit in the backfield all the time because the guys don't know how to block a tight end that they call up.
I'm having a vision in my head right now of like this game can be summed up by the Colts play against the Patriots where they had the punter take the snap behind center with no one else like on the line.
They
That's
really,
like
I
what
hope,
this game could look like.
yeah, I really hope they're practicing their trick plays. Let's just say that because I don't. If not a fake field goal, a fake punt, I don't know how they think they're gonna make a big play in this one.
Yeah, need some razzle, need some dazzle. The rest will figure itself out. But are the Raiders bad enough to like keep this one interesting for their part? Because I mean,
Yeah,
they just
I mean, if some guy like J.P. Holtz or some other rent a block tight end is available to get just choppered in, and if they can play 25 run reps well to set the edge so Taylor can turn the corner, then that should work. But I don't know I don't know their practice squad. It's got to be people we haven't heard of, and that like if it's that Youngstown State tight end, he's not a real tight end either. So they might need to put like an extra offensive lineman on the field, but that would be better than trying to just have Granson blocking the same like Chandler Jones, having him block the people that they would otherwise make Mo Alley Cox block. It's like that's the only guy who can do that. Now you just can't do it. So hopefully you can do something else. Whoops! It turns out you probably can't.
this game. I'm so morbidly curious to see how this one goes. I really I
I
can't
don't think
wait.
it's going to be very entertaining. I think that like sometimes I can watch bad football and just kind of laugh at how ridiculous it is. I think this is just going to be kind of bleak.
Okay, darn. Well, I hope you're wrong. I hope that this one turns out to at least be like the comedy of errors that it
You'll watch
deserves to
this
be.
game and you'll just kind of be struck with the observation of like we're so small in this universe, which is so hostile and indifferent
Like,
toward
yeah,
us.
this could be one where it's like I'm sitting in front of the TV, the girlfriend wants to go do something else, and I'm like, no, like I'm watching football. Like this is what, and she just like sees Sam Ellinger like fall over and like his pants rip in half, and it's like
You
that.
black out for a second and she's like, "John," and you're like looking out the window and you don't remember getting there.
Oh, that happens enough to me already. So, um, anywho, let's all right. I think we did a fair enough unpacking of what should be an interesting one out in Vegas. Got a handful more games to get to here. Cowboys Packers. What could have been, a matchup of the marquee franchises in the NFL and the NFC. Uh, well, they're trending in very, very different directions. Who would have thought that Mike McCarthy would have had the upper hand in this
Mike
one?
McCarthy wins again,
He
vindicated, proven right.
stays winning.
He was right all along.
Matt LaFraud, your days are numbered. But
Mike
when it
McCarthy carried Rodgers to a Super Bowl victory.
many are saying, us included, but when it comes to the Packers, uh, I got a handful of things right last week. One of the wrongest I've been last week and maybe ever was thinking that the Packers were going to like kind of start to get things turned around with that game against Detroit. That was
Even I thought they would
pitiful.
easily win that, but I was
See,
like, they suck, but they got this one, John.
yeah,
Like,
yes, we
wrong.
were all excited, but it was. I mean, and it was very obvious, like from the start of that game. It's like, oh no, 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 this is not going to go well for Green Bay, and the continued red zone, end zone interceptions from Rodgers. How you can only score 9 points on Detroit in the year 2022 is absolutely
It takes a
beyond me.
bad quarterback to be completely serious and answer the question.
And that's basically what Green Bay has at this point, and that's not good when you have Dallas and their defense coming up to Green Bay.
Might be bad for ayahuasca commodity markets too, John. So I don't know why you take
All the
that stuff.
markets are out of sorts these days. Tom Brady having like 600 million in FTX or whatever. And then, yeah, Rodgers' ayahuasca futures are just down the toilet.
Unless you need to craft a bad quarterback elixir, I don't even know what you're supposed to do with it. That and puke, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, tough scene out there. But bottom line, Mario, what are your thoughts on this game with the Packers checking in as 5-point home underdogs?
Yeah, that's a weird thing to see. Is when like, I feel like normally this kind of line would at least try to tempt people. I don't know if it would make people be tempted to bet that much more on the Packers, but do the old like, hey, it's Lambeau, it's Rodgers at Lambeau, guys. Packers by 3.5. It's like, no, they really should be at like 5.5, 6, like it is. So the spread is definitely like I'm surprised it didn't trend toward that kind of trap logic, but it's the right call, I think, because the Packers suck. Rodgers sucks. To be fair, it's about to get worse for him because you're going to see David Bakhtiari either not play in this game or leave in game because something's going to go wrong with his knee. And the Dallas pass rush is something that Rodgers simply cannot deal with.
No.
He might do Avante Davis at halftime. Get like hit 9 times in the first half and just you know take some kind of micro dose of something or other and then drive off on whatever he gets to the stadium with.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, it could be that bad. To pull Avante
It's the
Davis.
right state to be doing that kind of thing. Especially the way people drive during football games. The cops just kind of are like, you got to let them have the bumper system, like bowling bumper system.
Yeah, yeah, especially up in Green Bay. Yeah, that's ugh, boy. But on the Packers side of this, or I'm sorry, on the Cowboys side of this, offensively, what are you looking for to get going against this Green Bay defense?
Well, it's a little bit like the last time with the Bears, where it's like they need Pollard to be their main running back, and he could play very well. But then if they do, they kind of have this problem. Not it's a good problem to have. It's not an actual problem, but they have this new task of like, okay, well, who's going to run out the clock? And I guess Malik Davis was the guy, the other Florida back. He played pretty well at Florida, even if he wasn't any, Damian Pierce. So uh, maybe he can do whatever other lifting they need. But it's like if this goes the way Dallas wants it to, then they'll pretty much want to put Pollard on the bench in like the third quarter or something. And it should be a good game for him up to that point, even if it goes that way for the reasons like we saw last week. But the whole like 20 carry thing, it seems like it still can't happen.
And if on the off chance that Zeke is active, would you play him?
Oh man, I don't think I could for this game because I feel like Dallas might activate him if they think he can play 15 snaps. Like
Hmm.
they might activate him with zero intention of getting him over 8 carries because
Yes.
that's all that they really need. It's like if Pollard can take 15 and if they've got a 9 point lead going into the fourth quarter, like they need like 2 or 3 drives of someone else stepping in to get them to the end of the game.
Yeah, he could be that guy, but
And
having
Davis will
Malik
be
Davis
active
there
either way,
instead.
probably. Like if
Hmm.
even if Zeke is active, they're probably going to have a third running back active.
Yeah, you have to, given with the injuries that Zeke is dealing with right now. Speaking of guys dealing with injuries, we got a couple at the quarterback spot in this Rams Cardinals game. So Stafford, obviously, I believe, going through the concussion protocol, and Kyler dealing with a hamstring, I believe. So uh,
He's got a gamer thumb, John.
Zing, yeah, is Call of Duty coming out again this weekend? But either way, we have the Rams checking in as 1.5 point favorites against the Cardinals. This was a decent bit higher earlier in the week. It was 3.5 just a couple of days ago, but the Stafford news has obviously changed things just a bit. They've already played once this season. The Rams were able to kind of avoid a complete disaster start of their season, but their season has still, on balance, been a disaster. This one's at home. I don't think they have much of a home field advantage. Even if Stafford plays, I think I like the Cardinals straight up.
Yeah, if Kyler's all right, I mean, the Rams would be particularly crazy to not put Ramsey on DeAndre Hopkins every play. But even if they do, I just think between like I don't know, even Robbie Anderson, if he made a big play downfield, that wouldn't be so shocking because the Rams lack corner depth. So they lack every kind of depth really.
Yep.
So yeah, it shouldn't take a good team to beat the Rams, and so I think you can imagine the Cardinals as having some major issues and still being in the better spot here.
I could certainly see it. Let's hit a couple of questions real quick. We do have a couple pertaining to tonight's games, so don't want to leave those out necessarily. Let's see which one. Terry McLaurin, James Conner, Foreman, or guessing Deontay Johnson. Let's put that up on the screen there. So
Uh,
Foreman would be the we got to decide if he's not the person that we're starting.
yeah. So for the person that we're starting or sitting, sorry.
Yeah, we
Older pick.
eliminate
So I
him.
would be leaning Connor and
Okay.
Foreman, but it's really tough. I think we had that exact question earlier, and I couldn't really think it through either. But I like Connor if Stafford doesn't play. Although if he started Foreman, I wouldn't argue against it because like we already saw what he could do. It's just we don't know this time around what Hubbard might do against the Falcons.
No, yeah, very good point. Yeah, Hubbard could foul things up a little bit. There seems to be some concern in the chat regarding the weather for this
Actually, yeah,
evening's
I'll
game.
say Deontay Johnson over Foreman too. I think so.
Okay,
For
so
Deontay or Connor, it's tough for me to call.
at the very least, you can kick the can down the road and make that lineup decision on Sunday as opposed to making it tonight. Let's see here. Would you start with that same thing in mind, Cade Otton over Kyle Pitts?
I would not.
Okay. Pitt,
I mean, if we see JC Horn on Pitts, that's not great. But if they don't put Horn on Pitts, he's open.
yes. And then one more here. This one I feel like the answer is fairly obvious. Should you trade Devonte Adams for AJ Brown and Cordell Patterson? Yes.
I mean, Adams might rank surprisingly high versus Brown in PPR, but yeah, I believe in Cordarrelle, and I think Brown uh, will probably score touchdowns at a significantly higher clip than Adams, not last week aside. So yeah, I would probably make that trade for the AJ
Yeah,
Brown side.
I love touchdowns, so give me AJ Brown. Back to this Rams Cards matchup. Anything further as far as what can the Rams do if Stafford is like out or limited?
They're just a piece away, John. It's too bad they couldn't trade a couple first rounders for anybody at all. Who cares? Just get rid of those picks. Um, I don't know what the Rams can do. They suck. They have no good players aside from Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, they're like a more gilded version of the Saints. You got like three good players. You're in cap hell, and there's no way out.
Yeah, it'd be like if the Saints kept trying to make trades, uh, even though they don't have any picks coming up.
Yep. Yeah, I mean
I don't
it's
know what
yeah.
I really have no like. I wish I could talk to Sean McVay because I really want to know. Like, dude, tell me what you think is going on right now because I think you're missing something.
I don't know, man. I just got a lot of hair gel in.
Wolford
So
had a good week of practice. We just need somebody to. I'll bench them next week, but this week I want to give somebody at running back 25 carries and bench everybody else. And if I do this enough times, like it'll, everything will start being good again.
it's our only way path forward, man.
Ronnie Rivers
Anyway,
offense, yes.
I'm in for it.
Go Ronnie.
At least no Kyron Williams world. Two more games, night games to hit before we roll out. Niners, Chargers. Niners 7-point favorites in this one at home against the Los Angeles Chargers. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess we'll see on the injury report. I wonder if guys like Armstead and Kinlaw are any closer to coming back. I assume Verrett's going to play more in upcoming weeks. So this 49ers defense had a lot of missing players for, God, I guess it's been most of the year now.
Right.
And if they ever get Armstead back, it looks like is Kinlaw on IR or did he come back already?
He's
Anyway,
on IR, yes.
oh man. So yeah, if they ever get those two back, they'll start playing even better on defense. Like if I know Greenlaw missed some time, maybe he's at least an addition for this week. But I don't know. I think the 49ers are the better team, and I want to pick them. But Herbert versus Garoppolo is not something I'm ever gonna just slam the Garoppolo side of that. Like it's not like that seems like it could go wrong to me, even if Garoppolo has a ton of structural advantages, which he does. But it's like Garoppolo always has structural advantage, and he has plenty of bad games. So
Mm-hmm.
I will say though, he has no good excuse for it. He should have plenty of help. I would imagine Shanahan can pretty much toy with the run defense of the Chargers. So not that it's bold to point this out, but McCaffrey could have a really, really big game here. And if he doesn't, it's probably because the Chargers did something on defense to sell out to stop him, and they probably forgot to do something to deal with Kittle. It's like if they managed to stop McCaffrey, it's probably because other things went wrong for them instead. In which case, they could still win the game, but they need Herbert to play heroically. Which, again, he might not have Allen. He already for sure doesn't have Mike Williams. The 49ers defense, maybe it's not going to be in time for this game, but getting Greenlaw back alone is a bit of a getting healthy kind of thing. Verrett might help them at corner. So it seems like it's a tough spot for Herbert, and it's like the Chargers, as they're currently built, Herbert can win for them against a Falcons type team or maybe somebody a little better than them. But I feel like 49ers is just like you're just kind of walking into something difficult here, and you're not strong enough right now to deal with it.
Yeah, if the Chargers were healthy, the line would obviously be different. I am on the Chargers to cover 7,
Yeah,
but
that's a lot of points.
right. So that's my thing. There's just too much to trust with Jimmy G, especially when you have Herbert on the other side. But yeah, I'm not expecting the Chargers to go up there and win. I think that the Niners are one of the most complete teams in football, and they if you
And
got them in the Super Bowl odds, they were probably like 12th or 14th a couple of months ago, and now they're I think safely in the top 6 or 7
yeah, I
as far
really
as
like their
those go.
chances of they should be in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. Yeah, the other thing about this particular matchup that will be interesting to see is if the 49ers can get Fred Warner on Eckler specifically, and what that might look like.
Yeah, if Warner can slow Eckler, especially when
That
Eckler is
would be
all
game
that more,
over. Yeah.
yeah, because Eckler's so important to them right now with those key injuries to the receiving core.
It's so
Did you
funny
did you
that
see his almost touchdown where he rolled over the guy last week?
no, but I was just gonna say it's so funny how in the off season he was just like publicly pleading that the Chargers get some other running back to hand off the ball to this year, and they were like counter offer. What if we gave you almost twice as much work? Like what if what if? Yeah, that's really interesting. Can you maybe do yeah just take your 12 carries, raise that to 22, and also catch as many passes as last year.
Yeah, it's like the Pawn Stars meme. Like best I can do is double your workload. So pretty good verbal meme there. I've got to say. Let's see. Let's hit a couple more questions, and then Monday Nighter. Let's see. Christian Kirk or Josh Palmer?
Oh boy. God, I'm like the absolute wrong person to be asking this question because I'm like
We have
higher on
we have
Christian
Christian
Kirk than.
Kirk.
I will say there could be some kind of like garbage time kind of volume there for Kirk. I mean, if the Jaguars are losing by 17, Lawrence is probably throwing at least 35 passes. I don't know how many of those can go to Zay and Marvin Jones. So
Okay.
I think I'd go Kirk, but I would not at all criticize someone going with Palmer.
Yeah, they are 23 and 25 respectively in our wide receiver rankings for this week. Last one, again, that this has to do with tonight's game. DJ Moore in the rain or Jeff
Oh
Wilson
boy,
against Cleveland.
that's tough because I don't want to say no to DJ Moore, but the Cleveland run defense is really also the rain. Maybe I'm missing something, but I feel like it's not supposed to be that bad. Uh,
People
like
are freaking out.
I mean, sometimes the weather can change quickly relative to recent forecasts, and sometimes people are just like, "Hey, I'm in Charlotte. Check out the weather," and people are like, "Oh my God, that's not light rain." And maybe that would happen. Maybe that's what's happening right here. But it's supposed to be light rain, and it's not even supposed to be like a lock that it happens during the game. It's supposed to be like probably for part of the game. So sometimes rain does not have as much of an effect as people expect it to. I think it's safe to say wind pushing over 15 miles per hour more reliably drags down a passing game than any rain under, moderate level. So I'm not saying skip out on DJ Moore, but the Wilson thing is tough for me to pass over too because the Cleveland run defense is basically a no-show. And I think the Dolphins are going to move the ball pretty much at will in that game. So I just think it sets up really well for Wilson is more the thing.
Okay, and resident meteorologist Dave points out that there is a wind advisory from 7 o'clock
Oh,
onward this evening. So
uh,
Wilson time.
I gotta say I'm not seeing these things, but yeah, 40 mile per hour winds is really quite bad. It's seem the forecast that I'm looking at it has it more around like 10 to 12 miles per hour, which I
That's what
assume
Google
would
is telling me too.
which I would assume means maybe 20 mile per hour gusts. I know a lot about wind being in
Yeah, wow.
Madison because all the lakes and also the deteriorating climate. But yeah, it's usually you're talking like 20 mile per hour gusts and not necessarily that often if you got like a 12 mile per hour base wind.
All right. I hope everyone was taking notes for their weather and climate class on that one. I got a B in weather and climate my freshman year at Georgia. So pretty much an expert
That
too.
science requirement you're getting
Yeah,
past.
yeah.
Uh,
The science requirement for guys who weren't doing anything remotely scientific.
I
Yeah.
know that class track very well. I actually got one of my credits in that category in gym, summer
Oh, that
gym class.
rules.
They made us guess a couple things on a worksheet one time, but it was mostly like go for a walk.
That class sounds incredible. I could probably pass that one too. Um, let's see here. All right, let's wrap it up. We got Eagles, Commanders. This line stayed pretty stable throughout the week 11, 10.5 points, depending on where you're looking in favor of the Eagles. Um, I like Washington to cover this one, and I don't think it's because I'm, feeling jilted from the Eagles not covering against the Texans. I just think that Washington can keep it somewhat respectable.
Yeah, we'll see. I guess there's a few injuries to keep a track of over the week, but I mean the Eagles seem mostly fine. So as long as that's the case, I think they kind of roll. The question, I guess, yeah, like you were saying, is what about the spread specifically? And I don't know. I guess that's just kind of a lot of points, but I also struggle to imagine how Washington's going to score like at all. Because
Mm.
I mean, I guess the Philadelphia run defense is not great, but is it so bad that Brian Robinson's going to do anything? I doubt it. And if they're not going to utilize Antonio Gibson as a downfield receiver, it's so funny, by the way, how stupid Scott Turner is. He's like, I gotta make my J.D. McKissick packages. I gotta have my J.D. McKissick plays. And if it's the answer is, well, you can't have any. We're not playing McKissick. And he's like, well, fine. Then no, I'm not throwing to the running back. No running back targets. We don't. It's not important anymore. I said it was, but now it's not. So Yeah, not dialing up plays for Antonio Gibbs. Like, I am so sick of these idiots. Get this moron out of here. Never. If I see anybody hiring Scott Turner as a play caller again, I'm just crossing that team off. Idiots, idiot, stupid fail son nepotism case.
And so we have likely more of that this week. More frustrating usage, out of that Washington offense. In Heineke, we trust, but we can only really trust Heineke so much against this Eagles
And
team.
that pass rush is coming for him. Like the fun always ends with Heineke in some kind of crash,
Yes.
and I don't mean like, oh, his caffeine crash kind of analogy. I mean like he runs into something. It's a very literal version. He runs into something too fast and is hurt. And this I really hope it doesn't happen. But this is the kind of game where he finds a way to get he ends up in 10 feet in the air and doing some kind of snowboarding trick that he didn't mean to, and you don't
Yeah.
know how it's going to end.
Yeah, when Heineke does a McTwist, that's when we know that we're going to start to see Sam Howell.
Looks like they're not going to cover. Oh boy.
Dang it. But yeah, I think pretty.
Howell is better than Wentz, though. I've got to put that in real quick because that's just how bad Wentz is.
He stinks. Any notable observations from this Philly offense in this game where they could be up a good bit?
Yeah, I guess part of why I almost don't trust them to cover these double-digit spreads is that they don't have the back-breaking runner, the guy who can really make the defense get pushed over that edge of going from kind of tired to broken. Like Miles Sanders can exploit open field great, and he can even take 20 carries in a game sometimes, but he's never going to make the defense hurt. There's never going to be the defense tackling him, and you hear like the shoulder pads the way you do with some of these other running backs. And I think it is important to have that kind of player to get that kind of outcome with the defense. And I think you do want to break the defense if you're talking double-digit point spread. You want to be able to just kind of sit on the ball and say like we're just getting rid of the clock from now on. We like this 13-point lead we have. We shall be keeping it. But if you have Miles Sanders, you might just find yourself stuffed on first and second down and incomplete pass on third and backdoor cover after the punt.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles, I might have pointed this out last week, but they were first in the league in first half scoring and like 27th in second half scoring. So that always leaves you open to eel.
Let's go get Jordan Howard. He's got to be free.
He's probably hanging out.
Like last year, just call up Jordan Howard and simply have a power game again.
Yeah, not that hard. That's going to do it for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Of course, remember to tune in to Friday's edition. Ryan Belangi, Scott Genstad breaking down the DFS slate for this weekend of games. I'm expecting a lot of Indianapolis Raiders stacking, of course, in that one. But no, they will actually give you good, actionable DFS advice for that one. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, again brought to you by our friends over at No House Advantage.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.